Hello, Gary, Indiana. So today I want to talk to everybody about a political machine here in Gary, and not the one that everybody knows about, which is obviously NiSource and NIPSCO and Lukoil and the Hard Rock and the financial, political, and economic influence, of course, that comes from being pushed into this Chicagoland market. And there are a lot of cobwebs involved in being associated with that. However, today I want to talk about a completely different political machine, one that is quiet and effective and puts us in a state of dependency economics. And that is what we can label today as the nonprofit industrial ecosystem. That's what we'll call it for today. So Gary, Indiana has a structural political problem hiding in plain sight. And that is, for decades, city leadership talks about economic revival, and yet Gary struggles to attract enough private sector business and growth and new employers and grocery options and pharmacies and housing and investments and entrepreneurship. And when a city lacks a thriving tax base, a fair question follows. And that is, how does the political machine keep funding itself, right? So many residents look at the obvious players like the casinos, the utility companies, the major industrial industries outside money, power, the DNC, whatever, right? But another layer often escapes scrutiny. And that's what we're going to call the nonprofit industrial ecosystem today. So numerous 501c3 organizations receive grants and donated land and discounted property and public praise and partnerships and influence. And some do valuable work. But when nonprofits become politically adjacent power centers, taxpayers need to start asking themselves, who received the city land and for what price? What measurable outcomes were promised? How many jobs were created? How much executive pay was taken? Which board members are, politically connected? Which council people, how is our mayor politically connected? Which consultants donate to the campaigns? Why do poverty programs grow while poverty remains? And that's a big one, right? We have like major 501c3 presence all over the city, and yet poverty gets worse and worse. Empty lots are becoming grant proposals, and struggling neighborhoods become fundraising brochures, and broken systems become careers. It becomes a bit of a mess. And meanwhile, the working family gets higher bills and fewer services, and another speech about patience. Gary does not need a poverty economy. Gary needs a production economy. We need entrepreneurs, not gatekeepers. We need factories and logistics and freight aviation and rail warehousing and home ownership and transparent land sales and not insider transfers. We don't need ribbon cuttings, we need results. And the fact is that Gary sits on gold. We have rail lines and highways and airport potential and industrial land and lakefront assets and literally thousands of parcels of land that the city owns that they just sit on. The future of Gary should really be built by builders and not brokers of decline. And that's what we have with these 501c3 organizations, right? We have a system where we funnel land and we funnel grant money, or at least I shouldn't say we funnel it, but we help these 501c3s acquire it. And then a major portion of these resources go right back into the campaigns of the Democrat leadership that runs this city. And then we wonder why we're not saying, or why we don't have business coming in. Well, when you really think about it, most small business owners tend to lean conservative. And so if the Democrat machine is really pushing for business to come in, they're going to be bringing in Republican donors. And they're going to be bringing in Republican business owners, and they don't want that. And so they are literally pushing this 501c3 dependent ecosystem that keeps them well funded, but unfortunately does not bring you opportunity. It does not bring you jobs. It does not bring you the ability to purchase a home. It just leaves the people of Gary stuck in a dependency cycle where you're either on government aid or you're literally commuting an hour or an hour and a half to and from work in Chicago. So this is something that we really have to look at, Gary, Indiana, and evaluate and ask ourselves, how do we vote in the future? Do we vote for the well-funded machine, or do we vote for the people-funded candidates? Thank you.